There's something undeniably powerful about a man who's emotionally detached, not cold, not heartless, but stable, grounded, and unmoved by emotional manipulation. That kind of man is rare. That kind of man becomes unforgettable. Because here's what many don't realize. When you detach emotionally, you don't push her away, you pull her in differently. You become the question that lingers in her mind when the noise of everyone else fades. You become the exception in a world full of men seeking validation, approval, and emotional reassurance. And that right there is what makes her start to feel the loss before she even admits it. Most men respond to heartbreak, rejection, or distance by doing what they've been conditioned to do. They chase, they reach out, they explain themselves, they try to fix things, not out of strength, but out of fear. Fear of being forgotten, fear of being replaced, fear of no longer being needed. But the truth is, the more emotionally available you make yourself after she's distanced herself from you, the less she feels your value. Because in her mind, if you still need her after she's walked away, then you never value yourself to begin with. Women are not attracted to a man who is emotionally dependent. They may feel sympathy for him, even affection, but attraction, desire, that only grows in the presence of psychological strength. And strength is most clearly seen when a man can walk away, not out of bitterness, but out of respect for her choice, for the silence, and most importantly, for himself. Detachment is not about revenge or pretending you don't care. It's about mastering the storm inside you and choosing not to make someone else responsible for calming it. It's about holding your ground when everything in you wants to reach out, to reconnect, to relive the moments that once made you feel alive. But you don't. You choose peace over chaos. You choose silence over desperation. You choose dignity over chasing something that clearly walked away from you. And this is where things begin to shift, because when you stop reacting, she starts reflecting. When you stop giving, she starts noticing the absence of what once felt guaranteed. Your attention used to be free, your emotions used to be predictable, but now you've changed. You've become quiet, detached, unreachable. And nothing is more attractive or more haunting than a man a woman can no longer read. This isn't about playing games. This isn't manipulation. This is reality. When a woman sees that your happiness is no longer dependent on her presence, it forces her to question her own value in your life. And that is a powerful, disarming realization. Because every woman, whether she admits it or not, wants to feel chosen. But she doesn't want to feel like you have no life without her. When you detach, you show her that she was never your only source of meaning, that you are more than what you gave to her. A man who is emotionally detached begins to glow differently. He doesn't walk with the same hesitation. He isn't glued to his phone waiting for a text. He doesn't monitor her social media or dissect her stories. He lives, he breathes, he thrives. And the more he does, the more the woman who left him begins to question if she really knew who he was at all. Here's what you need to understand. Most women leave thinking you won't change. They believe the version of you that begged, that compromised, that placed her at the center of your emotional life is who you truly are. But when you go silent, when you grow, when you detach, suddenly that certainty is shattered. And with that shattering comes doubt, curiosity, and eventually a desire to reconnect. Not because you chased, not because you pleaded, but because you evolved. Detachment is the beginning of clarity. It allows you to see what the relationship truly was. It forces you to see yourself without the filter of love or obsession. You begin to understand where you gave too much, where you lost yourself, and why she stopped valuing you. And as painful as that truth may be, it is also your path to power. Because the moment you stop needing her validation, her attention, her affection, that's the moment you start to reclaim yourself. You may think this journey of detachment will push her further away, but what you'll find is that the silence you offer becomes louder in her world than anything you ever said. She'll remember the attention you used to give her, the effort, the devotion. And now, she'll remember the absence, the stillness, the you that stopped trying. And when that happens, she'll start to feel something she didn't expect, uncertainty, not about you, but about herself. She'll wonder if she made the right choice. She'll ask herself why the one man she thought would always be there no longer is. And that dissonance between what she expected and what actually is, that is the beginning of regret. But by the time that regret begins to surface, you'll be different, not out of spite, not out of arrogance, but because emotional detachment isn't just something you do to win her back, it's something you do to find yourself again. And when you find yourself, you no longer seek what once broke you. You no longer crave the love that taught you how to suffer. You start to crave peace, purpose, growth, and you realize you never needed her to begin with. You loved her, yes, deeply, but you love yourself more now. And that love, that self-respect, becomes the foundation of a life that doesn't revolve around being chosen, but around choosing. You choose your battles. You choose your energy. You choose who you let back into your heart. Emotional detachment doesn't mean you forget her. It means you remember yourself. It means you rise in value, not because you shouted louder, but because you chose silence. A silence rooted in self-respect. A silence that becomes the echo in her mind long after she believed you'd still be waiting. And that is when she starts to return. But by then, the man you've become may no longer be interested. It doesn't happen all at once. It happens gradually, quietly. She doesn't realize the shift immediately because she never expected it to happen. She always thought you'd be there, present, available, emotionally invested, always giving just a little bit more than you should. But then something changes. The good morning texts stop. The check-ins throughout the day fade. You stop reaching out just to see how she's doing. And the silence between you two grows. But this time, it's not her pulling away. It's you. That's the moment it hits her. She notices, and not in the obvious ways you might expect. She won't say it out loud. She might even act indifferent. But she notices. She notices that your energy isn't circling her anymore. She senses the weight that's been lifted off your shoulders, the emotional investment you've withdrawn, and it makes her uncomfortable, not because she misses you yet, but because something that once felt certain now feels unknown. She thought your efforts would always be there. She assumed she could drift in and out and you'd still be waiting. But now you're not chasing anymore. There's a kind of psychological shock that happens when someone realizes they are no longer the center of your emotional world. And that's not something people easily admit to. See, we're wired to crave validation, attention, and affirmation. When someone gives it to us consistently, we come to expect it. And when that validation is removed, especially from someone who once poured themselves into us, it creates a void, a silence that speaks louder than any words ever could. You stopping your effort tells her everything she didn't want to hear. It tells her you've started to accept the truth, that maybe this relationship wasn't balanced, that perhaps your love was carrying the entire weight, and more importantly, that you're beginning to see your worth beyond how she sees you. That kind of realization is powerful and rare because most people don't pull back. They double down. They try harder. They send the long messages. They try to prove their value, but not you. You've stopped. You've turned inward. And that's the first step toward gaining back what you lost. Your dignity, your peace, your clarity. She may not say it, but the moment you stop trying is the moment she begins to feel the absence of everything she took for granted. Not just your messages or your affection, but your presence. your consistency, your emotional loyalty. And in a world full of men who are emotionally erratic, what you gave her was rare. But here's the truth. Effort without reciprocation is self-destruction. Trying to carry a relationship on your own is a slow form of emotional exhaustion. At some point, you must come to terms with the painful reality. Love isn't proven by how much you endure. It's proven by knowing when to stop giving to someone who's no longer receiving. You stopped trying not because you didn't care anymore, but because you finally started caring about yourself. And that change is unmistakable. It radiates from your behavior, your posture, the way you respond or don't. You're no longer emotionally available the way you used to be. You're no longer begging for attention or hoping for a change that never comes. And that's what unsettles her, because your detachment is a reflection of her disconnection. You've mirrored her energy back to her, and now she's face to face with what she created. This is when doubt begins to creep in for her. Not always immediately. Sometimes it takes days, weeks, even months. But it comes. Because once you stop trying, she begins to wonder why. She starts asking questions she wasn't prepared to ask. Did you stop loving her? Did someone else take her place? Are you finally over her? These questions don't arise out of love alone, but out of ego, insecurity, and the harsh confrontation that she may have lost something she thought she controlled. And yet, you're not doing it to manipulate her. You're doing it because growth demands it. Trying too hard for someone who no longer appreciates your efforts is a distraction from your own evolution. When you stop trying, you free up emotional space to rebuild yourself, to reconnect with the parts of you that got lost in the pursuit of someone else's love. And that healing, that inner realignment, that's what changes everything. You become different, stronger, not bitter, not resentful, but wise. You start putting that energy into yourself, into your goals, into your physical and emotional health, into rebuilding the life you once paused for someone who didn't see your worth in the moment. And ironically, the more you grow away from her, the more she starts to feel the loss, not the loss of what was, but the loss of what could have been. Because what really haunts someone isn't just your absence, it's your evolution. It's seeing that the version of you they couldn't love is now being loved by someone else. Or worse, that version no longer even needs love to feel fulfilled. When she realizes you've grown past her, that you no longer revolve around her orbit, that's when the echo of your absence starts to get louder. Women are intuitive. They can sense shifts in energy more than words. So when you stop trying, it doesn't go unnoticed. It becomes the trigger for reflection. And in that silence, she remembers everything. Your patience, your care, your consistency. She compares it to what she has now. And sometimes she realizes that no one else has shown up for her the way you did. But by then, you've already reclaimed yourself. You're no longer available in the way you once were. You've changed. And the truth is, that was always the point. To grow, to detach, to reclaim your power, you don't stop trying to punish her. You stop trying to free yourself. You stop trying because you finally understand that the right person won't make you beg for love, attention, or respect. And once you internalize that, everything changes. Because sometimes the most powerful message you can send is no message at all. And that silence, that shift, that's when she finally feels your absence. And it's far too late. There comes a moment when silence no longer feels like punishment, it feels like peace. That moment, that stillness, is the first breath of emotional rebirth. It's when you finally understand that detaching from someone emotionally isn't about being cold, indifferent, or heartless. It's about choosing yourself in the face of repeated disappointment. It's about walking away from a bond that kept asking you to shrink just to keep it alive. And in that detachment, in that deep release, a new version of you begins to emerge, one not defined by rejection or longing, but by clarity. You see, true emotional detachment isn't something you force. It's not something you fake to make her jealous or to appear strong. It's something that rises out of exhaustion. Spiritual, emotional, and mental exhaustion. It grows in the silence after you've said everything there was to say. After you've forgiven what shouldn't have been done and tolerated what should never have been accepted. It's a quiet internal shift when your soul decides it can no longer carry the weight of waiting for someone to choose you fully. This kind of detachment is powerful. It isn't loud or dramatic. It's not posted online. It's not declared through messages or actions meant to get a reaction. It's subtle. It's the absence of reaction. The lack of impulse to reach out, to fix, to explain yourself again. It's when your need for peace outweighs your desire for their presence. That's when the real transformation begins. It starts with simple things. Less checking your phone. Less wondering if she's thinking about you. You begin to rewire the way your mind works. Where her name once lived in the center of your thoughts, now there is space. And in that space, you rediscover pieces of yourself you forgot about. Dreams, goals, parts of you that had been put on hold while you were chasing something that wasn't chasing you back. You begin to see the relationship for what it truly was, not what you hoped it would become. That clarity is painful but liberating. You stop romanticizing the few good moments and start seeing the full picture. The inconsistency, the emotional unavailability, the push and pull that left you feeling unstable. You start to realize that your heart was never asking for something unreasonable. It was asking for mutual effort, and she couldn't give that. Maybe she didn't know how, maybe she didn't want to, but either way, you stop blaming yourself for her inability to meet you where you stood. Emotional detachment is not about bitterness. It's about boundaries. It's when you decide that you will no longer allow someone else to determine your emotional weather. You stop riding the highs and lows of their attention, their mood swings, their inconsistency. You anchor yourself in self-respect. You begin to trust yourself again to make decisions that serve your growth instead of your wounds. That's when people notice the change. Not because you're posting quotes about healing or walking around with forced confidence, but because your energy is different. You're grounded. You're not easily rattled. You've stopped bleeding emotionally for someone who never brought a bandage. And in that transformation, you start building a new life, one that isn't waiting for her to return, one that's not rehearsing what to say if she calls. You're no longer stuck in loops of what if and if only. You're simply present, here, now, focused on what's ahead instead of what's behind. The beauty of true emotional detachment is that it makes room for better connections. When you stop holding space for someone who didn't value it, you open yourself up to relationships that are reciprocal. You begin to attract people who match your energy, who don't need convincing to stay, who aren't confused about your worth. But even more importantly, you become enough for yourself. You stop needing someone else to validate your value. You stop trying to prove that you're lovable because you already know you are. And the irony? That's often when she notices. When you're no longer orbiting her. When you're no longer available at her convenience. She begins to feel the gravity shift. But by then, you're not the same man. You don't crave her presence anymore. You don't mistake nostalgia for desire. You've outgrown the dynamic, and even if part of you still cares, it's not enough to go back. Because emotional detachment, once fully formed, isn't reversible. It's a point of no return. You've learned the lesson, the hard one, the one that says, loving someone deeply doesn't mean you should keep sacrificing yourself. that giving someone chance after chance only teaches them that you'll tolerate being hurt. Emotional detachment teaches you to love without losing yourself, to give without depleting your soul. It teaches you that the most powerful thing you can do is walk away, not to hurt them, but to heal yourself. And make no mistake, this isn't easy. Emotional detachment comes with grief. Not just the loss of the person, but the loss of the future you imagined with them. It comes with lonely nights and questions that don't always get answered. But it also comes with rebirth, with strength you didn't know you had, with peace that can't be shaken by someone else's indecision. This is your time to reclaim everything you gave away too freely. Your time, your love, your energy, your dreams. This is your rebirth, not as a man chasing love, but as one embodying it from within. And that is when everything changes. There's a quiet strength in walking away, not in anger, not in bitterness, but in complete clarity. When you finally let go of someone who couldn't value you, you stop trying to prove yourself. And that's when something transformative happens. You stop being the one learning the lesson, and you become the one who teaches it. Not through words, not through revenge, but through absence. Through the silence that follows when you detach fully, she begins to understand everything you ever meant. But it doesn't happen instantly. At first, she might feel relief, freedom, maybe even a sense of victory. She told herself the story that you needed her more than she needed you, that you would always wait, always chase. But detachment rewrites that narrative, not with arguments or explanations, but with the undeniable truth that you're no longer there. Your energy is gone. Your presence no longer cushions her insecurities. She starts to feel the vacuum that your departure created. And that vacuum speaks louder than anything you could have ever said. This is where the real shift takes place. When a man who once gave everything, his time, his heart, his loyalty, no longer shows up, she begins to see just how much he actually gave. Because here's the truth. People often don't recognize the depth of your value until they feel your absence. And when you've truly detached, you stop checking if she notices. You stop waiting for the "I miss you" or the late night apology. You've already moved on, not just physically, but emotionally, psychologically, and spiritually. That's what makes you the lesson. Your detachment becomes a mirror. It reflects back everything she failed to see when you were still standing there, hoping she would love you right. It forces her to sit with her decisions, to realize that love doesn't stay where it's not respected. She begins to notice that something's different. You're not cold, you're not playing games, you're just unavailable. Not angry, not resentful, just completely indifferent. And that indifference is the most powerful thing a man can offer after heartbreak. It says, "I've finally chosen myself." See, many men confuse detachment with emotional numbness. But this isn't about shutting yourself off from love. It's about refusing to beg for it. Detachment doesn't mean you stop feeling. It means you stop feeding what hurts. You start investing in yourself again. You rebuild from the inside out. You focus on your health, your purpose, your growth. And in doing that, you not only heal, you elevate. And the more you elevate, the clearer it becomes. You were never the one lacking. You were simply trying to love someone who wasn't ready to receive it. Maybe she was broken. Maybe she was confused. Maybe she thought she could do better until she realized that better doesn't just mean different. It means deeper. It means more grounded, more mature, more real. And by the time that realization hits her, you've already outgrown her. Emotionally. That's what makes your silence echo. She hears it every time. Someone new can't hold a conversation like you did. Every time someone else fails to understand her the way you once did. Every time she reaches for connection and finds surface-level flattery instead of depth, you become the standard by which all others are measured and fall short. Not because you were perfect, but because you were real. You gave what most men are afraid to give. Vulnerability, patience, consistency. And she let it go. But the beauty of detachment is that you no longer need her to see it. You're no longer sitting by the door hoping she walks back in. You've stopped rehearsing closure. You've stopped justifying why you stayed so long. You've let go of the illusion that she'll wake up one day and finally understand. Because even if she does, it won't matter. You've already built a life that no longer makes space for people who couldn't love you at your rawest. You now move with discernment. You don't chase, you attract. You don't beg, you observe. You don't force, you flow. And this shift, this internal growth, creates a new version of you. One that no longer confuses attachment with love. One that knows the difference between being wanted and being valued. One that doesn't get pulled back by someone's regret. Because you know regret isn't love, it's just delayed clarity. And for her, that clarity will cut deep. Because she'll remember everything. The way you supported her even when she pushed you away. The way you stayed loyal when others would have walked. The way you chose her when she wasn't even choosing herself. Those memories will haunt her, not because you want them to, but because real love leaves fingerprints on the soul. And when it's gone, you feel the absence in places words can't reach. But the most important part is this. You no longer define your worth based on whether or not she returns. You're no longer a man waiting. You're a man walking into purpose, walking into peace, walking into relationships that mirror the love you gave so freely. You're no longer defined by what broke you, but by how you rebuilt yourself after. You become the lesson, not because you tried to prove anything, but because you lived your truth. You loved deeply, you gave completely, and when it was no longer healthy, you let go gracefully. That grace, that strength, is what leaves a lasting impact. So if you're in the process of detaching, know this. You are not weak for still feeling. You are not foolish for having cared. But you are powerful for choosing to stop chasing someone who couldn't see your worth. You are powerful for walking away from half love, and you are becoming the kind of man who doesn't need to be chosen to feel whole. Because once you detach, once you've done the hard work of healing and releasing, you no longer look back with longing, you look back with wisdom, and that wisdom becomes your compass moving forward. And for her, she may come to understand everything too late. But by then you'll be gone, not out of spite, but out of self-respect. And that silence, your silence, will teach her everything she needed to learn.